To Kill a Mockingbird, Chapter 2. This is the 11th video. Of course I have some questions because our last video was very instructive when it came to religion. So my question number 1, why were the Quakers... No, let me change my question. Who were the Quakers? Answer. Well, the Quakers were among the first settlers in the United States, mainly in New England, right? Down south, you know, people came to the United States or went to the United States for very different reasons, right? Next question, why were they called the Quakers? Answer, because they would quake, they would shake at church as they received the power of the Holy Ghost, the Holy Spirit. Question, who was Jonathan Edwards? Answer, he was an extremely important preacher in the United States in the middle of the 18th century, right? He was so important that when people study, more traditionally study American literature, they have to study at least one sermon of Jonathan Edwards. You know, I was thinking about Padre Vieira now, here in Brazil. But I really don't know. It's because here in Brazil we almost don't read our authors, right? I mean, we talk about them, you know. We study about them. We have to remember, you know, periods and you know, things people say for vestibular and the test and etc. But we don't actually read them. But if we were a more literate society, you know, I think people would recognize Padre Vieira much more frequently. Guys, I have here a very nice edition, you know, by chance, of Padre Vieira, you know, and his sermons. It doesn't matter if you're a Catholic, you know, there's such a certain kind of culture you just have to have. You know, it's like the Bible or Homer, you know. Our whole culture has been constructed, among other things, on the Bible and on the Greeks, you know. Homer, the traditions and you know, the philosophers, right? It's not a matter of, oh, I'm not a Catholic, so oh, I am an atheist, so I don't believe in the Bible. I'm not interested if you are an atheist or not. I'm telling you that it's impossible to understand great literature and great culture if you don't know at least a little bit of you know, the Bible, or, you know, in our case, Padre Vieira, for example. And then, of course, for an American, Jonathan Edwards. I don't know, imagine you wanting to listen to Bach, you know, and, you know, the composer, right? By the way, did you know that Bach had 20 children? 20! Well, that's just a digression there, but 20. Okay, but the point is, you know, how would I understand Bach if one of his masses, you know, mass is the ritual when you go to the Catholic Church, if I have no idea about the Bible, you know, so I don't think it will do. Think about José Saramago. You know, José Saramago is an atheist, was an atheist writer, right? And he wrote a very important book called O Evangelho segundo Jesus Cristo. I'm looking here because it must be somewhere here. Well, it's not important, but he wrote a book called O Evangelho segundo Jesus Cristo. And even if you want to criticize religion, you have to read the Bible, right? You just have to. Well, so why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because eventually, if you want your culture to go higher, you can't just focus on the guys in the present, you know. You have to focus on the basis of guys, you know. For example, people love Machado de Assis, but they don't know any of the classics, right? You have to go a little bit further. So in the end, I'm closing the digression. I just want to encourage you to read at least one or two sermons of Padre Vieira, not for school, His way of writing is fantastically well. Much better, in my opinion. I'm sorry to say, I'm sorry, American people, but much better than Jonathan Edwards. And then, of course, if you are interested in American culture, consider reading at least one sermon of Jonathan Edwards. Well, I think we were still in the review. Okay, doesn't matter, let's go on because I have digressed enough already. I knew I had annoyed Miss Caroline, so I let well enough alone and stared out the window until recess. Recess, here's the break, right? And Jem cut me from the covey of first graders into the schoolyard. Remember that covey is a group of small birds. I put a nice picture there in our Quizlet, right? Small group of game birds, a set, a company, So, of course, when she says that Jem cut her the covey, from the covey, Jem set her aside from the rest of the guys. If I didn't have to stay, I'd leave. Jem, that damn lady says Attica's been teaching me to read and for him to stop it. Don't worry, Scout, Jem confronted me. Our teacher says Miss Caroline's introducing a new way of teaching. She learned about it in college. It'll be in all the grades soon. You don't have to learn much out of books that way. It's like if you want to learn about cows, you go milk one, see? Milk a cow, right? Getting milk from a cow. Yeah, Jim, but I don't want to study cows. Sure you do. You have to know about cows. They're a big part of life in Macomb County. I contented myself with asking Jim if he'd lost his mind. I'm just trying to tell you the new way they're teaching. The first grade, they're teaching the first grade stubborn. It's the Dewey Decimal System. Here we have an interesting fact. I'm going to read a little definition for the Dewey Decimal System. What is the Dewey Decimal System? It's a system of a library book classification and arrangement with 10 main subject classes. So I want you to understand it pretty well, right? So it's Dewey Decimal System. If you have a library, I actually changed the way people organized libraries. So you have a library, you're going to divide it in 10 categories. Okay, the categories I have here is general knowledge, philosophy and psychology, religion, social science, languages, science, technology, arts and recreation, literature, history and geography, right? Then you would have numbers assigned to those areas, and then you would have sub areas, right? It has nothing to do with a new way of teaching and etc. Of course, Jim just confused, or he wanted to sound fancy or smart, right? But it has nothing to do with this new way of teaching, even though he's right. We can see that nowadays in our schools, right? So the idea is you are not going to learn from great books, you are going to learn by doing it. It seems a very nice idea, like here in Brazil. If you are learning how to read, for example, you're not going to read, old books from the past, talking about experiences that are not connected to your reality. No. You're going to read a magazine, for example. It sounds nice, but of course, the problem is, if you don't learn from the greats, if you don't learn from the guys who are really the masters of language, then what are you doing? School is supposed to refine you. School is supposed to make you use a language further and higher than you would use in everyday life. All right. Of course, Machado de Assis knows much better Portuguese than any reporter of nowadays, alright? So we lose a lot by giving up on the classics. Well, Jim was right about that, but he was wrong about the Dewey Decimal System. Having never questioned Jim's pronouncements, I saw no reason to begin now. The Dewey Decimal System consisted, in part, and now this is the part that our narrator understood, but what would be the Dewey Decimal System? Because this is the kind of class they would be having, right? So what did it consist of? In part of Miss Caroline waving cards at us on which were printed the cat, red, rat, man, and you. No comment seemed to be expected of us, and the class received these impressionistic revelations in silence. I was bored, so I began a letter to Dill. Miss Caroline caught me writing and told me to tell my father to stop teaching me. Besides, she said, we don't write in the first grade. We print. You don't learn to write until you are in the third grade. Remember that important difference in English, right? Between printing, it's when you write, with, let's say, the printing letters, and when you actually write, that is, your writing is cursive. So our narrator was already writing, really writing, not printing, okay? And says, no, you're all wrong. Of course, this is the part of the story we feel like being in her place, so you could stand up and slap Miss Caroline on the face. But we can't. Calpurnia was to blame for this. It kept me from driving her crazy on rainy days, I guess. She would set me a writing task by scrawling the alphabet firmly across the top of a tablet, then copying out a chapter of the Bible underneath. Remember that scrawling, I put in our list there, that is poor handwriting, okay? So she would scrawl the alphabet firmly across the top of a tablet, then copy out a chapter of the Bible underneath. If I reproduced her penmanship, this is a very beautiful word, right? Penmanship. What is a penmanship? Penmanship is the way you write, okay? How beautiful you write. If I'm not wrong in English, you can also say calligraphy, but calligraphy sounds more fancy. Remember, the Latin words in English tend to sound more fancy. If I reproduce her penmanship satisfactorily, she rewarded me with an open-faced sandwich of bread and butter and sugar. I put a very nice picture of an open-faced sandwich there for you, because those little things are the things that help us in everyday life. Open-faced sandwich is just a slice of bread and whatever you put on your sandwich, right? Because the original sandwich, alright, is bread, pepperoni, whatever, and another slice of bread. I really like this description of her open-faced sandwich, because I remember when I was a child, I must have been, like 7, 8 years old. I love open-faced sandwiches just like that. With the only difference, my parents didn't use butter. It was just very later on in my life I learned how much better butter is compared to margarine. But it was similar. So what was my open-faced sandwich? I would get a slice of bread, put some margarine on top, in that case butter, and then spread some sugar there. It was delicious. I'm not so sure that today I would enjoy it in the same way I enjoyed when I was a child. So, if she reproduced the whole thing very well, she would get a open-faced sandwich. In Calpurnia's teaching, there was no sentimentality. I seldom pleased her, and she seldom rewarded me. It's like, oh, but you made a nice effort. No. She would reward her just if the handwriting was very nice. And of course, that improved her penmanship. Penmanship.